Hey Titan, there's a moment every morning right before the world remembers your name where your entire life can shift. Most people waste it. They wake up, grab their phone, and let the noise of 1,000 strangers decide their mood, their focus, even their sense of self. But there's a rare kind of person who uses this moment differently. Someone who turns the first minutes of the morning into an advantage so powerful it changes the way they think, act, and feel for the next 24 hours. The ancient Stoics understood this better than anyone. Marcus Aurelius didn't start his mornings hoping the day would be gentle. He prepared for reality. He sat with his journal and wrote reminders that most people would run from, not to scare himself, but to strengthen himself. He knew that the mind is softest before sunrise, and that's exactly when you should shape it. Modern neuroscience now confirms what those ancient minds already knew. The brain is highly programmable right after waking. Your first thoughts, your first emotions, your first reactions, they become the blueprint for the rest of your day. But most people hand that blueprint to chaos. They surrender the steering wheel before they even take the first breath out of bed. You're not here to surrender. This morning, you're stepping into a different path, a Stoic path. A path where the first light of day becomes your training ground, not for motivation, but for mastery. A path where you reset your mind before the world gets the chance to pull it in 10 different directions. Because once you understand the truths we're about to break down, the way you think before sunrise will never be the same. Coming from the introduction, there's something deeper you need to know before the sun even touches your window. Most people think they wake up as a blank slate, ready to choose how they want to feel. But the truth hits harder than that. The mind doesn't start pure, it starts programmed. And the moment your eyes open, you meet the habits that have been silently shaping your life for years. The first thought that appears in your mind isn't really you. It's the echo of everything you've practiced, tolerated, repeated, and allowed. That quiet voice that says, stay in bed, check your phone, you're tired, or today will be hard. That voice is not your identity. It's your conditioning, rehearsed thousands of times until it became your automatic script. And here's the twist. Most people spend their entire lives obeying that script without ever questioning where it came from. Morning is powerful because it exposes this truth with brutal clarity. Before the world interferes, your mind reveals what it's been trained to believe. Neuroscientists call this the default mode, a mental autopilot built from past behaviors. If your first thought is negative, hesitant, unfocused, or anxious, it means yesterday's patterns are still running the show. But here's the good news. This is also the moment you have the greatest leverage to change it. When you catch that first thought and refuse to let it dictate your day, you interrupt years of conditioning in one tiny moment. You take back control from old habits that were never meant to lead your life. Growth begins right there, in that small decision to choose awareness over autopilot. And once you break that first chain, the rest of the day becomes yours to shape with intention instead of repetition. Coming from the last truth, once you recognize that your first thought is shaped by old patterns, the next step becomes unavoidable. If conditioning has been steering your mornings, something stronger has to take the wheel. This is where most people misunderstand the real source of strength. They think it's about forcing themselves, pushing harder, or living in constant pressure. But the Stoics knew something different, something most people never learn their entire lives. The reason discipline feels heavy is because people treat it like punishment. They treat it like an enemy. But true discipline isn't about fighting yourself. It's about finally choosing yourself. When your values, actions, and decisions line up, discipline stops feeling like pain and starts feeling like peace. It becomes the quiet confidence that comes from doing what matches your goals, not what your impulses shout for in the moment. Inner alignment means waking up and acting in a way that reflects who you want to become, not who habits have made you. When your inner world agrees with your outer actions, resistance fades. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop delaying the things that make you stronger. You stop entering battles that only drain your energy. And that's where discipline becomes something different. It becomes clarity. Instead of feeling like a chore, discipline becomes a form of self-respect. It becomes the way you protect your growth, the way you guard your focus, the way you choose long-term strength over short-term comfort. When your actions match your principles, there's no harshness, only intention. And once you taste that inner alignment, you stop chasing motivation altogether. You act because it feels right, because it reflects who you are shaping yourself into, and because every aligned morning builds a mind that cannot be thrown off course. Coming from the previous truth, once discipline stops feeling like a punishment and begins to feel like alignment, something powerful starts to happen. You begin noticing the subtle moments where your mind is easiest to influence. And the most critical one, the one most people waste every single day, is the moment right after waking. This is where the real transformation begins, because this is the window where your mind is both vulnerable and open, soft enough to be shaped, and quiet enough to reveal what it's truly carrying. Right after waking, the brain enters a state where old patterns loosen their grip. Your defenses aren't fully up, your routines haven't taken over, and the world hasn't demanded your attention yet. It's a fragile state, but not in a negative way. It's fragile the way clay is, before it becomes a sculpture. Scientists call this the theta state, a phase where the brain absorbs information rapidly, almost like a child's mind. This means whatever enters first, your thoughts, your emotions, your decisions, gets multiplied throughout the day. Most people never take advantage of this softness. They hand this golden moment to stress, to notifications, to memories of unfinished problems. They let anxiety be the first visitor. They let distraction be the first teacher. And then they wonder why the rest of the day feels scattered. But if you learn to step into this window with intention, the entire trajectory of your morning and eventually your life changes. Because in this delicate state, small actions create huge shifts. One sentence you tell yourself can set the tone for hours. One choice toward clarity can override yesterday's momentum. One moment of presence can build a stronger mental foundation than an hour of motivation later in the day. When the mind is at its weakest, it is actually at its most influenceable. And that becomes your greatest advantage when you learn to lead it instead of letting it drift. Coming from the last point, once you understand that the mind is most influenceable right after waking, the next truth hits with surprising clarity. You don't wait for a good mood to start the day. You create it through action. Most people sit around hoping to feel ready, as if motivation is supposed to magically walk in, shake their hand, and escort them out of bed. But that's not how the human mind works. Not in the morning, not ever. Mood is a follower, not a leader. The Stoics knew this long before psychology proved it. They didn't wait for emotional approval to act. They acted, and emotional stability followed. In modern science, this is known as behavioral activation. When your body moves, your brain adjusts. When you begin, your feelings catch up. When you shift your physical state, your mind shifts with it. This is why staying still after waking often leads to heaviness, overthinking, or resistance. A motionless body signals to the brain that nothing needs to change. But the moment you introduce movement, even something as subtle as sitting up with intention, your nervous system wakes up. It reads your posture, your breathing, your pace, and builds your mood around those signals. This is why a simple act, like stepping out of bed, drinking water, stretching, or taking one deep breath with awareness, can shift your entire emotional direction. You're not waiting for the day to give you energy, you're generating it. You're telling your brain, we're moving now, follow. Once you understand this, Mornings stop being a negotiation. You stop asking yourself how you feel and start deciding how to act. And through those small actions, mood, focus, and clarity fall in line. Movement becomes the spark, emotion becomes the echo, and you begin living from intention instead of inertia. Coming from the last truth, once you realize your mood is shaped by the actions you take, not the feelings you wait for, you step into a deeper understanding of mornings. It's no longer about adding more routines, more habits, more noise. In fact, the next shift is almost the opposite. What truly shapes your mind before sunrise isn't what you include, it's what you refuse to let in. And this is where most people unknowingly sabotage themselves. Everyone talks about morning rituals, affirmations, supplements, podcasts, but the Stoics focused on what they blocked out. They understood that the mind gains strength not from constant stimulation, but from selective attention. The things you ignore become the true architects of your peace. Because every morning, your brain is like open soil. Whatever lands first takes root. And if you're not careful, weeds grow faster than wisdom. When you protect your early moments, you're not being dramatic, you're being strategic. Ignoring negativity, distractions, and digital noise is not avoidance, it's leadership. It's choosing what deserves space in your mental home and shutting the door on what doesn't. This silence you create becomes sharper than any habit you add later. Research shows that the brain processes negative information more quickly and deeply than positive inputs. That means one stressful notification can outweigh 10 motivational quotes. One message that triggers anxiety can shape your entire emotional pattern for hours. This is why ignoring the wrong things is more powerful than consuming all the right things. The strength comes from the refusal. The discipline comes from the filter. The clarity comes from the things you decide do not belong in your first hour of consciousness. When you master the art of ignoring, your mind becomes lighter, your priorities stronger, and your mornings untouchable. Because you're no longer trying to control the whole world, you're simply controlling what enters your inner world. Coming from the last truth, once you understand the power of what you refuse to let into your morning, something else becomes clear. The early hours aren't just a routine, they're a reset button most people never press. Your mind carries the weight of yesterday like a silent passenger, and if you don't interrupt it, it quietly climbs into the driver's seat again. This is why some people wake up tired even after sleeping, stressed even before checking anything, or already losing a battle they haven't started. Yesterday's momentum is strong, but there's only one moment powerful enough to break it. Morning is that moment. At dawn, your mind hasn't fully glued itself to yesterday's stories. The emotional residue is present, but it's not anchored. This early window gives you the rare ability to choose a direction before old patterns regain their authority. Neuroscientists call this neuroplastic vulnerability, the brief period where your brain is highly malleable and less attached to the emotional loops of the previous day. This means the morning is the only time you can interrupt the cycle without fighting a war. If you try to reset your mind in the afternoon, you're competing with a dozen impulses, obligations, and accumulated emotions. But in the first minutes of the day, you're meeting yourself before the world stacks its weight on you. You're meeting your mind in its lightest form. This is why the Stoics treated mornings as a rebirth. Marcus Aurelius wrote about greeting each day as if he were rising to new life. Not because every day was easy, but because every day was unwritten. Morning is the moment when you can cut the thread connecting you to yesterday's mistakes, doubts, or frustrations. It's where you choose thought instead of memory, intention instead of habit. When you use this moment with awareness, you stop repeating days you meant to leave behind and start creating days that reflect the person you're becoming. Coming from the last truth, once you understand that morning is the only moment strong enough to interrupt yesterday's momentum, the next realization hits with unmistakable force. The first battle of the day is never with the world. It's never with stress, distractions, responsibilities, or people. The very first victory is always internal. Before you conquer anything out there, you must conquer the quiet resistance inside you, the part that pulls you toward comfort, delay, and old habits. This resistance shows up differently for everyone. For some, it's the urge to stay in bed a little longer. For others, it's the reflex to check messages, escape into noise, or drift into passive thinking. But beneath all of it lies one truth. The biggest obstacle is never the morning itself. It's the version of you that doesn't want change. The Stoics understood this well. They didn't talk about defeating enemies. They talked about defeating impulses, illusions, and excuses. Winning over yourself in the morning isn't about harshness or force. It's about clarity. It's reminding your mind that comfort is not the goal, growth is. It's understanding that self-respect is built through small promises kept before the world demands anything from you. When your feet hit the floor, even when you didn't feel like it, that's a victory. When you start your day with intention instead of drifting, that's a victory. When you lead your thoughts instead of being led by them, that's a victory. These small internal wins create a chain reaction. They shape your posture, your confidence, your decisions. They build a quiet strength that follows you into every conversation, every challenge, every task. And the beauty of this victory is simple. No one can take it from you. It doesn't rely on motivation or ideal conditions. It relies on the choice to rise above your own resistance. When you win this first battle, the rest of the day unfolds differently. You move with control instead of chaos, direction instead of drift, because the strongest foundation you can build is the one where you start the day already undefeated. Coming from the last truth, once you understand that your first victory is always internal, something even more powerful comes into focus. Your morning habits aren't just routines. They're a mirror reflecting the way you live your entire life. The patterns you repeat in those early minutes become the patterns you follow everywhere. The mindset you carry out of bed becomes the mindset you carry into every challenge, every decision, every relationship. The way you wake up becomes the blueprint of how you exist. If you start your day in a rush, your life becomes a race. If you start it with avoidance, your life becomes a cycle of running from things. If you begin with distraction, your life becomes scattered. And if you start your morning feeling defeated, your life begins to take the shape of quiet surrender. Most people never notice this connection. They think their morning choices are small, insignificant, harmless. But the truth is that the first moments of the day act like a script the rest of your hours follow. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. They weren't obsessed with morning routines because it was fashionable. They cared because they knew the morning sets the tone for the soul. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about rising to meet the day, not out of habit, but out of identity. He wasn't preparing for tasks, he was preparing for life. When you wake with intention, your life becomes intentional. When you choose clarity over noise, your decisions become clearer. When you begin with even one small act of discipline, you carry strength into your day. And when you start by grounding yourself instead of reacting, you create a life where you respond with purpose instead of panic. Your morning is not a moment, it's a message. It teaches your mind who you are becoming. And when you choose to wake with awareness, consistency, and strength, your life begins to reflect those choices in every direction. Coming from the last truth, once you realize that the way you wake is the way you live, another layer of wisdom opens up, one the Stoics never ignored. There's something ancient, something built into the rhythm of the world itself, that supports a clear mind in the early hours. Long before alarms, calendars, and glowing screens, humans were shaped by the rising sun. And even now, with all our modern chaos, nature still rewards the mind that meets the morning before the world wakes. There's a silence at dawn that doesn't exist anywhere else. Not the silence of isolation, but the silence of alignment. Your nervous system is calmer. Your cortisol is naturally rising to help you focus. Your mind is free from the pressure of expectations. At this hour, the world is not asking anything from you. There are no demands, no noise, no competition. It's the one moment where life gives you space instead of taking it. Science has confirmed what the Stoics practiced thousands of years ago. Early mornings strengthen mental clarity, regulate emotional stability, and boost long-term resilience. Your circadian rhythm sharpens memory and focus in these early hours, making them the peak time for deliberate thought. It's not just discipline, it's biology working in your favor. When you rise before the noise, you reclaim time that would otherwise be lost to reaction. You access a level of thinking that disappears once the world begins shouting. You step into the day with an advantage most people never give themselves. That stillness becomes a force. That quiet becomes fuel. That clarity becomes momentum. The early mind isn't just awake, it's aligned with the natural order. And when you move with nature instead of against it, life flows differently. You see problems sooner. You think deeper. You act with more intention. Morning stops being a struggle and becomes a secret ally that strengthens your character long before the rest of the world opens its eyes. Coming from the last truth, once you understand that nature quietly strengthens the early mind, you begin to see something many people never learn. Peace isn't something you stumble into. It doesn't fall from the sky or arrive when life suddenly becomes easy. Peace is something you build, brick by brick, through the decisions you make before the world has the chance to shape you. And the morning is where this construction begins. Most people think peace is the absence of problems. They wait for situations to improve, for people to behave better, for stress to magically fade. But the Stoics knew peace had nothing to do with what happens around you, only with what happens within you. It's a skill, not a miracle, a practice, not a coincidence, a product of deliberate choices, not lucky circumstances. Peace is manufactured by what you allow into your mind and what you refuse to entertain. It's created through the way you breathe when you wake, the thoughts you choose to focus on, the habits you commit to, and the boundaries you quietly enforce. It's crafted through stillness, self-awareness, and the discipline to step away from things that disturb your inner balance. Morning gives you the perfect foundation for this creation. Before messages arrive, before responsibilities pile up, before anyone's voice becomes louder than your own, you have the freedom to set the emotional climate of your day. One grounding thought can shift your entire perspective. 1 minute of intentional breathing can lower stress levels for hours. One act of discipline can build self-trust that carries into every challenge. Peace is not found, it's built, and each sunrise gives you the materials to construct it again. When you understand this, you stop chasing calmness and start creating it. You stop waiting for life to quiet down and begin shaping a mind no noise can shake. The morning becomes not just a fresh start, but a workshop where you forge the strength to meet the world without losing yourself. And now, Titan, you've walked through the 10 truths that reshape a mind before sunrise. You've seen how your first thought isn't your identity, but your conditioning. How discipline becomes freedom when it aligns with your values. How the mind is most influenceable in those soft early moments. And how motion creates the mood you need long before motivation ever shows up. You've discovered the power of protecting your attention, the strength of using morning to break yesterday's momentum, and the importance of winning that quiet battle within. You've learned that the way you rise is the way you live, that nature sharpens the early thinker, and that peace isn't found, it's built. These aren't just ideas, they're tools. And tomorrow morning, you'll either pick them up or let them sit. But if you use even one of them, your day won't start the same. Your mind won't feel the same. And slowly, quietly, your life won't look the same. Before you go, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me which of the 10 truths hit you the hardest. Your insight might be the message someone else needs today. And if you want more Stoic guidance like this, simple, powerful, and life-changing, make sure you subscribe and tap the bell. There's so much more ahead for you. Stay strong, stay centered, and meet tomorrow's sunrise with a mind ready to lead.